I'm glad to be joined today by Rae Paoletta, who's the space editor at Inverse. She's been investigating Goop products, which we've spoken about a little bit, as well as the wellness sphere for the last few years. I'm super interested in this, Rae. I mean, let's start with Goop, which is a website that Gwyneth Paltrow is involved with. We've talked about everything from vaginal steaming, which is horrifying and incredibly dangerous, to all sorts of other pseudoscience products, stickers, and other things that are marketed on the website. How did Goop first get onto your radar?
So I first started investigating Goop when I was a writer at Gizmodo, but I had known about it before that. Goop has kind of just been in the public consciousness, unfortunately, for a few years now, mostly because they tend to do these kinds of outlandish product promotions on their website, like many of the ones that you just named. And as somebody who is a woman and feels that women are particularly targeted by this kind of pseudoscientific promotion, that it was just personally something I'm invested in, and I felt like it was something that was worth digging into.
So, do you know much about sort of what the relationship is between some of these companies that advertise on Goop and Gwyneth Paltrow? Because Gwyneth Paltrow is associated with Goop, and of course, Goop is advertising products from other companies. They aren't products by Goop necessarily. Are these standard ad deals in your experience? Are they commissioned in some way? Does Gwyneth Paltrow benefit beyond just the fact that her website is selling ads? Do we know?
So it's actually a bit unclear what the relationship is. What we know now, and from especially my last investigation, which I've done as space editor at Inverse, I think what I found is that they get away with it by saying that these are not promotions, that rather they're just things they're obsessed with. I think that's the word or the phrasing that they use. They tend to promote, though, a lot of the same characters. Most recently, in my investigation into Anthony Williams, one of the medical mediums who Goop says is a trusted expert on their site, it just seems that they have some kind of deal worked out, maybe, but it's not one that they've publicly commented on.
And if I recall correctly, some of these, the regulations around what sorts of claims you're allowed to make are different in different countries. So, for example, in the United States and Canada, they're not the exact same regulations. And what we're finding are that some of these advertisers that are advertising on the Goop website, they've had problems in other places, including Canada, because of the unsubstantiated health claims that they make.
hmm That's correct. And one of the things that troubles me a lot about our regulations here is, as you know, the FDA doesn't have to approve of supplements, and that's something that Goop promotes heavily on their website, in the form of vitamin supplements that they seem to have, such as the high school jeans pack that Goop sells under their brand, and other, just various vitamins, that supplements that don't really need to be approved. Obviously, we don't know what the safety of these supplements is, so that's a bit disconcerting.
What do you think is going on sort of socioculturally that is creating an environment where these types of scam products can be successful in the marketplace? My idea is that it starts often from sort of a reasonable place, which is a healthy skepticism of big pharma and sort of like the advertising industrial complex, and that some people sort of take it too far. And that makes it so that they almost find anything that the FDA hasn't endorsed. Hey, if the FDA is terrible, so if they've not endorsed it, maybe that's something I should look into. And it's sort of this desire to do something that I think is really good, which is just have a healthy level of skepticism about the world around us that goes too far in some sense. Do you agree with that? What else do you think is going on that makes this type of stuff popular?
I think that absolutely taps into what's going on here, David. I think that there is this kind of messaging at Goop, and very smartly so, that people feel that they've been failed by the pharmaceutical companies. They feel failed by traditional medicine. And what Goop does is a kind of, in a predatory way, sees people who are sick, sees people who are desperate, sees people who are fed up kind of with big pharma, what have you, and says, hey, we're an alternative. We can be a solution to you. Even though, as we've seen time and again, these products don't actually help anybody. And in fact, in many cases, endanger them more, especially in the case of things like, as you said, vaginal steaming, yoni eggs. These are products that specifically target people who are, female identified, and that's really a problem. I think that that for me is one of the most personally disturbing things, that Goop seems to be targeting women who are more often than not failed by traditional medicine, and happen to actually, if you look at research, they wait in emergency rooms longer than men. They're more likely to report higher instances of pain, but get less treatment for them. So women have legitimate things to be upset about with regard to the medical industry, but Goop is far from some kind of empowering or even helpful resource for them. Nobody can be empowered by false information, and it's disgusting, and it's horrifying that it's being targeted and basically packaged toward women this way.
To a much less damaging degree, there's been a similar dynamic with diets in the West, in a sense. And what I mean by that is, we all probably have friends on Facebook who report, I changed my diet in this way or that way, or I started drinking 3 glasses of water at 10:15 a.m. every morning, or whatever. And all of a sudden, all of these different problems have kind of resolved. And I think that there's a significant sort of self-selection bias in that, combined with placebo effect, where there's a lot of people who are struggling with something, and really what they need is some kind of change in their life. So whether it's going gluten-free or only eating tree nuts for 3 months or whatever it is, right? They were going to have, assuming that they don't endanger themselves, they were going to report some positive outcomes, because it's a matter of sort of feeling like they're doing something for themselves. The problem I have with some of the products you've been following is that they can straight up do physical damage. They can do physiological damage to people that can be irreversible, or at least could require significant medical treatment. And that's where any placebo benefits sort of, I imagine, would completely be counteracted by the actual physical dangers, would they not?
Absolutely. I mean, just in my most recent investigation, again, into one of Goop's medical mediums, when as a space editor at Inverse, I was horrified when I started researching what Anthony Williams, the medical medium, is actually promoting in his books, which are Amazon bestsellers. They have sold tons of copies, countless copies, and have a real cult following online. I was horrified by some of the advice that he was giving people. Some of it involves, completely changing your diet to only eating one kind of fruit. He's told some of his people that he's consulted with. That's really horrible for your digestive system. I don't know who or on what plane of reality that seems like a good piece of advice that you should give to somebody.
Yeah.
Making these radical changes to your body system and not expecting any of the repercussions is just horrifying. And then again, what really bothers me a lot is that Goop will put disclaimers on their website that say, well, none of this is actually approved by the FDA. None of this should substitute medical advice. But then they go on to call these people trusted experts. They go on to explicitly refer to these people as, as such. And I think that that's incredibly irresponsible. It's just flat out dangerous.
Can you give our audience a sense of, it doesn't have to be from Goop, but in all your research of this wellness sphere, a couple examples of things that are basically completely benign but insanely overpriced? Like they just don't do anything, but they're being sold at outrageous prices. And then on the other hand, a couple examples of like the really dangerous stuff.
So one of the more innocuous things that is, there's a few answers to this question because the list is very long.
I bet.
But one of the things that I've noticed, that this hasn't even been, we'll start with Goop. So one of the things that I thought was really funny that Goop has been had promoted last year that I did an investigation on was these $120 body vibes stickers, I believe they were called. And they were literally just stickers, like the ones that I think I got back in the 90s from the grocery store or whatever. But you'd allegedly put them on your body, and they would heal you in all sorts of ways. They would heal your anxiety. They could heal physical damage, all sorts of outlandish claims. Again, these were $120 stickers for a pack. That one is just, it's ultimately benign because it's not actually going to hurt anyone. I guess it's hurting their wallets, and maybe it would help your self-esteem, hurt your self-esteem rather, when you think about how much money you paid for stickers. But it's not actually going to cause you any damage. I'm seeing other things within the wellness sphere lately, just different riffs on old dieting tricks. So, for example, I saw the other day at the store something called "I Love My Skinny Body Tea." And this is something I have a particular issue with because it's using various plants and FDA, un-FDA regulated information to promote this kind of detoxifying tea. That's a word we see a lot now. There's no evidence that this tea is going to make you lose weight. And also, why do we keep messaging to people that the ultimate goal in their lives should be to lose weight anyway? That's a different conversation. But I mean, this tea just basically is a combination of cinnamon and some vanilla chocolate flavorings. That's about it. I mean, it's not going to do anything. It's just funny to see unleash the model within. I don't know. Maybe it would just be releasing sadness within because you're paying like $6 or $5 for a bottle of tea. It's ridiculous. But I guess, yeah, going on to the more dangerous stuff, when we see things like the vaginal steaming that's being promoted on Goop, I mean, that just is a nightmare. The yoni eggs that are produced with materials that are definitely not safe for people to be inserting into their vaginas. These are things that are okay with Goop, but not for, it's terrible for public health. The thing I also want to mention that I have a particular issue with is Goop using what it calls medicine bags to heal people of various ailments. One of the things they promote is carnelian stone to treat infertility. And I think that is very harmful in a psychological way for a lot of women who are struggling to get pregnant and infertility is a big issue in their lives. And then saying, oh, well, if you just get this stone, you can have a better chance at becoming pregnant. I think that's incredibly manipulative and predatory.
Yeah, and sometimes even the ones, like, for example, there might be no harm in standing near a stone, or I don't know what you're supposed to do with it. Maybe it's more than standing near it, but anything you're doing that has no impact, that's going to delay you from seeking actual help with that, could actually end up, specifically when it's something like having a baby, you might end up just losing several years that you could have actually been working with a medical professional because you're trying out rocks or whatever else.
Yeah, that's one of the ultimate harms with Goop, right? Is that it basically tells people that they don't need to seek actual medical advice for some of their problems. This is something that I've talked about with some of my friends, including Dr. Jenna Gunter, who's done a lot of great work in this sphere as well, and has been a great critic against of Goop. And she and I were talking one time, and we were saying that basically when you follow the advice of some of these people, including the medical medium, that people believe that, maybe when he makes claims that cancer and other disease are not genetic, that you can fix it by eating fruits and vegetables. I mean, that's just a flat out lie. And it's not just a lie, it's actually a dangerous lie. So this is actually delaying people from getting screened for various illnesses, going into their family's history and seeing if they have genetic predispositions to any of these problems. It's really dangerous. And frankly, all I can say is that I'm disgusted by it, but I just don't really know how these people sleep at night, frankly.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. We've been speaking with Rae Paoletta. She's been investigating the wellness sphere as well as specifically products available on Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop website, space editor at Inverse. Thanks so much for talking to us about this.
Absolutely, David. Thanks for having me on.